So the colours we tend to be using right now are really earthy tones. So think really grounded colours. So like forest floor, think sand dunes. So we're using things like khakis, sage, mushroomy colours, terracottas, those kind of things. So really lower chroma, earthy tones. So yes, greens will always be there, but we're not using like bright leafy greens. We're now using more like grounded, calming, like colours that draw you naturally to the ground, to the floor. Light's incredibly important because it does change the way that colours are perceived. So when we think about the light coming through a western window in the evening, that's a really colourful hue to the light. So think sunset light. That's going to change the colours of the surfaces that you've got in a space. So if you've got a wall that's got a darker, a more beige kind of colour to it, and then you've got that warm light, it's going to increase the intensity and the warmth of the colours that are on the surfaces. Light's incredibly important, especially when we are considering the colour that we use with the orientation, whether we've got an east-facing window, a north-facing window, or a west-facing window, as well as the time of day that that space is going to be occupied. When we additionally think about neurodiversity, people like to adapt the light intensity. So people are more likely to have the big light turned off, for example. So relying solely on window light. So it might be a slightly lower lux level in that room. So we have to consider, in terms of neurodiversity, the additional elements of how users changing the light within the space can affect the colour intensity. I think a lot of the rules that we have in the industry in terms of colour are based on assumptions and based on stereotypes. So for example, we hear a lot about dementia-friendly colours, dementia-friendly palettes. That's actually just an assumption based on the fact that we assume most people with dementia are old. You can get dementia and dementia-related conditions like Alzheimer's as young as 6 years old. So it's not something that is solely related to age. In the same way that there's an assumption that red is going to make people more violent or more aggressive or more energized, we probably wouldn't use things like tangerine orange in schools where there's like hyperactive children, but the more muted chroma versions of orange, so like your terracotta clays and things like that, they can be used. So I always argue that every single colour can be calming and can be used as part of a calming atmosphere and environment if it's used in the correct proportions, and it depends on what other colours and materials it's used in contrast with. So it's about how you use it, where you use it, and the proportion that you use it in. So as I mentioned earlier, people that require more stimulation, so anybody, if you've got racing thoughts, you've got anxiety, you need more stimulation. So if you need to be in an environment where you've got background stimulation going on, red can be used to make you stop, to ground you, to calm you, to give you something to focus on, to take you away from all those racing thoughts. Whereas red in an environment for somebody that is hypersensitive to stimulation, that's probably not ideal. So we really need to consider things for everybody, because some people, like I said, need more stimulation and some people need less stimulation. If we was to use fire engine red in a school with SEND children, that probably might cause problems. However, if you look at things like different chroma versions of red, so like more burgundies, wine tones, that kind of shade, in comparison and in as part of a curated palette with wood tones, natural elements, textures, and other kind of warmer but earthy colours, that can be incredibly calming. Again, using the reds and energising colours is absolutely fine if you use it in elements that are removable. So we can use, when we think about schools, we think about really colourful things. Great, but not in permanent surfaces. So we wouldn't be using bright colours in like your window frame. So if you see like schools where they have like a yellow window frame and then a green window frame and really bright colours, they are so hard to remove if they cause problems. Whereas something like a bright patterned multicoloured rug or a chair or red pen pots, that's fine because they can be removed if they do cause problems. But like I say, you can't change the surfaces of the floors and the walls. It's a lot harder to do, so we would avoid it in the large surfaces. Yeah, there's lots of colour combinations, again, where you would never think of putting those two colours together, but then when you see a palette inspired by nature and you see these colours together in nature, it makes sense. So for example, if I told you that we was designing a mental health cafe which is a first point of contact. Instead of people going to the A&E department, they go to this place instead as an emergency mental health space. If I told you we was designing the kitchen to be purple and green, you'd think, purple and green, that's insane. But because you're immediately thinking of bright purple and bright green. But if instead I explained that it's a really muted, more of like a taupey heather kind of purple with a sage green, which again is more muted. It's not like grass green, it's like bay leaf, so it's darker, it's lower chroma. Those kind of colours together, so like heather and lavender and like bay leaf green or sage green, they're very different to using bright luminous colours. So things like purple and green work really well together, or like pink and orange work really well together. But again, sunset is pink and orange. It doesn't have to be that intense. It can be like terracotta orange and like a mauvey pink. They go really well. It just depends, again, on the intensity. And I think this is why it's so important to talk about chroma, because a lot of designers know and understand about light reflectance values for their contrast, but not many people understand and can process a chroma value associated with colour and working out how intense something is. So using the more muted colours, which essentially has a bit of grey mixed into them to make them more calmer, more grounding, every single colour can be used. Green and blue are calming colours, and everybody finds them calming because of nature, because the blue reminds us of the sea and the sky, and green reminds us of the jungle and plants and leaves in the outdoors. I think generally the industry makes those same assumptions. So I mentioned earlier about the rules that we have for designing with colour is based on assumptions and stereotypes and biases, rather than science and logic and actually really understanding why. So now, after speaking to Rhys, we now know that the biology of these wavelengths is what makes the biggest difference. And actually what we thought is, well, the sea and the sky is calming. Having that deeper understanding of the science behind, okay, well, why do we find the sea and the sky calming? That is the really interesting thing. And I think if more designers understand the why, it'll improve things significantly. I find this issue a lot with other elements of neurodiversity in designing for non-visible disabilities, is that if I just explain to designers, you have to do this, it's important, they don't understand why. But if I explain, you have to do this because of this, or because this user group experiences the environment in this way, when they understand the why, it's easy for them to remember that they need to do the thing in the first place, and it's easy for them to accept it and to convince their clients that they need to do something.